Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. I finished reading Holy Sister, book 3 of Book of the Ancestor, and I have some thoughts that I would like to share with you. So this is my why you should read Book of the Ancestor, or why I love Book of the Ancestor. Take it as you will. It is the third trilogy by Mark Lawrence that I have read, and it is my favorite thus far. And Mark Lawrence was already one of my very favorite authors. So that says a lot. I enjoyed Book of the Ancestor tremendously. And it's really hard to go wrong with the type of magic school setting that Mark Lawrence so skillfully sets up in the Convent of Sweet Mercy. And it is also very much a coming-of-age story, the story of Nona Gray, and we'll come back to her. As a concept, it's really tough to beat a school of assassin, warrior, and magic-wielding nuns in a dying world. It is also, however, a tale of friendship, of how our vulnerability is part of what makes us lovable, and how our imperfection is part of our humanity. It's a story of loss and love, how the former makes possible the latter. Now, let's go to the setting. It is just absolutely one of the most mind-blowing settings I've ever encountered in fiction. It is stark. It is otherworldly, both literally and metaphorically. It is vast. It is haunting. The world of Abeth is a dying world, and it just gives me chills, and, well, pun intended, I suppose. It gives me chills to think about Abeth. It's a world that is mostly encased in ice, and there is a narrow strip of habitable land around, I guess, the center of the planet that is kept that way by a satellite moon of a sort. I won't get too much into that because I am trying to avoid spoilers here, but it is just such an incredible concept as a setting, and having the story set in this dying world really ups the stakes of the story. You have the story is personal, it is global, but it is also in the midst of this vast setting, just absolutely apocalyptic as well. So it really, really works as a fantastic, well, is it fantasy or is it science fiction? I mean, this is another thing about Mark Lawrence that I actually love. Every trilogy of his I've read, and I've read 3 of them so far now, he just ignores the boundary between fantasy and science fiction, and he does so, I think, with great skill, or just happily, and it works. He makes it work so well. And when you read the books, you'll see what I mean about the blend of science fiction and fantasy. I can't say too much in detail because, again, no spoilers, but let's just say that you're never quite sure if it's magic or technology at play, or a combination of the two. And that's perfectly fine. Now, speaking of magic, the magic in this world is very much related to its settlement. And there are all kinds of, another cool thing that Lawrence does in terms of the setting and the world building, there are all these myths about the past. And you're never quite sure, this is a Mark Lawrence thing as well, you're never quite sure to believe these stories of the past. Sometimes they seem a bit suspect. But there are these stories of these 4 founding races, and also these ancient people who may have preceded them on Abeth, these entities that are very mysterious. Regardless, though, in the minds of the people of the present of the story, the magic is in many ways related to these founding races, and it's pretty cool. It's very cool. The magic, there are some just epic moments in the trilogy because of the magic. I'm not going to get into, there are various kinds, but the one I want to talk about the most is the path. And the path is about where Mark Lawrence gets philosophical, more philosophical perhaps than I've seen him in his previous trilogies, but I loved it. I loved every moment of the path and being on the path. Oh, I was pretty terrified too. I mean, it's big, it's epic, but it's also very much tapping into the potential of humanity. It's about our connection with not only each other, but with the world around us, being part of the world around us. It is about our rootedness in the Ancestor. This is, after all, the book of the Ancestor. And the path is where we see how we are all connected to the Ancestor. So some beautiful stuff, mystical stuff that Mark Lawrence infuses this story with that I really appreciated. Now, it really does come down to the characters, though. Do you love the characters or not? And for me, the answer is a huge affirmative. You have this school setting where you have a collection of misfits and eccentrics. And that's complete with bullies who serve as practice antagonists for the protagonist, but also friends without whom that protagonist would never make it. And some of those students and even teachers can be both, really, antagonists, bullies, and friends. So it's really cool how Lawrence, even with the secondary characters, succeeds in giving us a sense of a complex personality with flaws and virtues. And some of them are just really fun to get to know. Now, the relationships that these characters get into are absolutely beautiful. There are some friendships that I found incredibly moving, and some of those friendships cross over into love. And I also found that to be a very compelling part of this trilogy. But it all comes down to Nona Gray, the protagonist, the main character of this trilogy. She is such an incredible character. I cannot think of another character that I have rooted for so strongly. She is both vulnerable and strong. She is abandoned and loyal. She is fierce and gentle. She's proud and shy, beautiful, and terrifying. She's all those things. She's broken, and you want, as the reader, her wholeness so much. You are rooting so hard for her, and it is such a beautiful thing to watch her journey as she matures and comes to understand herself through the eyes of her friends. In terms of the narration, this is another thing that I really admire about Mark Lawrence's writing in the 3 trilogies that I've read so far, and it is no exception when it comes to the Book of the Ancestor. What he does is so brilliant and so well done. He is a master of the flashback and weaving the narrative of the present with the narrative or narratives of the past. He does this in every single book of his I've read so far, but in Book of the Ancestor, each of the 3 books does it a little bit differently. And I loved what he did in Holy Sister, with a part that picks up from the previous book, from Grey Sister, and a part that is later on that picks up from something that began in the first book, if that makes any sense at all. There's a lot of interweaving of these various parts of the story. And there can be years in between sometimes, some of these various parts, but they all come together in the end in a beautiful way, weaving together to give you this powerful story. And one of the things that I love about this narrative style is that it really does a lot of good things. It's effective for suspense, and it is great for keeping the reader's interest because you're going back and forth between these various moments in the overall story. It also really helps to preserve some mystery in there, and it enables Lawrence to give us some stunning reveals in each of the books, but especially in Holy Sister, the 3rd book, which is my favorite. It is 3rd person, which is different from the previous 2 trilogies of Mark Lawrence that I read, that being the Broken Empire trilogy and the Red Queen's War trilogy. So Book of the Ancestor is 3rd person rather than 1st person. And it really worked well. There is a bit actually of 1st person in a sense, I suppose, where, particularly in Red Sister, the 1st book, where there is Nona telling a bit of her own story. And true to Lawrence's style, you have to take that 1st person narration as unreliable. And this is something you keep in mind with Mark Lawrence's. When you have a narrator talking, a person telling a story, be a bit skeptical, be a little questioning when you hear people talking. Look behind the story a little bit. Read between the lines a little bit. That is something that will pay off, I think, in a Mark Lawrence book. But it's a very clever aspect of his storytelling, the way that he mixes it up, the way he has the past and the present constantly intertwining, going back, and it just makes the story that much better. In terms of the themes, Mark Lawrence is a master. He does a fantastic job of weaving some very important themes in here, and this may be why Book of the Ancestor is my favorite of the 3 trilogies so far. I just so enjoyed what Mark Lawrence had to say about friendship in Book of the Ancestor. Such a beautiful statement about friendship. When you get to the end of this trilogy, I challenge you not to feel moved, have a little bit of lump in your throat, and because I tend to be a little sentimental, yes, there were tears at the end of this one for me. And it has everything to do with what Lawrence says about friendship and what friendship means for our humanity. In also treating with the theme of friendship, he brings in loyalty. I mean, you will never find a character more loyal than Nona Gray. That is just part of who she is. Part of her quest for friendship is the loyalty she offers in return. It is incredible and moving at times, the way she treats other people, the people that she adopts as her friends. And related again to these themes is another theme, mercy. It is called The Convent of Sweet Mercy, and you don't fully realize why until the 3rd book. But there are some really wonderful moments in here of mercy, and these are illuminating as well for our humanity, for what we can aspire to be. And I just found it so wonderful. And along with mercy comes redemption. Redemption being another sort of sub-theme in here that I thought was handled really brilliantly. And survival. And just there's also, by the way, a whole lot of action and some really epic stuff and huge battling armies and explosive magic that can alter the state of the universe. I mean, there's just there's just a lot of really great action in Lawrence's writing as well. I need to emphasize that. I tend to get stuck on themes and other things, but wow, there's some really fantastic action, some great combat scenes, and we are talking about assassin nuns, warrior nuns, and magic-wielding nuns here, so expect a lot of really epic stuff. And so those are the reasons why I think you should read Book of the Ancestor, certainly the reasons why I love it. That's it from me for now. Until next time.